All right, I am Elizabeth Lachey with Slay the Mic, and we are sitting down and having an uncut, unfiltered, raw conversation with Maria Young, an activist, community member, author, director, so many more things, but also an athlete. So we are going to sit down and have an intimate interview conversation about what's behind the backboard. I know today we are sitting down. I'm super excited, Maria, because we've sat down and had conversations before, but I don't think ever in this type of setting or lighting or like this intimate way.
Definitely not like this.
So Maria Young, today I want to cover like everything: family, community, identity, you just in general, and what inspires you. So I mean, if you could define yourself in a couple of words, like what words come to mind?
Well, obviously, first off is faith, spirituality, just being driven by God, and family, tribe, village, which is, they all go to, blend and mend together. Self, pride, and respect. So I think those are my foundation, and then everything that I do, from whether it's creating or just moving through my day-to-day life, all of that, they branch off from each other. So
did any of those words come along later in life rather than earlier? Because in terms of like the tribe and the family and the self, and
nah, they're all things that were instilled in me from my family. And then as I got older, I brought my own definition to it and what they meant to me. Not necessarily what was taught to me, but what does faith look like for me? What does the bond of tribe look like for me? What does self-pride and self-respect look like for me? But they planted the seeds, and then what you have now.
When we talk about the itty bitty Maria Young, like growing up, and I also know that you're an athlete and a talented one at that, but
Right.
as that comes into your life, like when did that show up?
Pretty early. I talked to me and my family have had this conversation before, and it's like I was about 3 when they could kind of see that I had a love for basketball.
Okay.
But then when I got about 5 or 6, and when I really started playing, I was playing in youth league and different things like that, I could tell just at that point that it was something that I really, really liked to do. I didn't really know, of course, at that point, I didn't really know my talent and where I was on that spectrum, but I just knew that I had a love and a passion for it. So that's literally what became my life from 5 up until 22.
So that was not my reality. I will tell you right now. Basketball, I can't play basketball now.
Hey, God used you in other ways.
Right.
It's all good.
Exactly.
It's all good.
Thank goodness, because literally I still do a granny shot. It's just no getting around that. But
Right.
in terms of like, how did that shape you? Of, okay, that you have this talent at the age of 3, at the age of 5, and you start to like hone in and be a part of teams and leagues and different things. How did people respect you on the court?
It's really it's kind of tricky because a lot of what translated on the court at that time was the discipline and the structure that I had at home.
Okay.
Through my mom and my family. My grandmother, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my older brother, just them being able to see like, okay, you you can do something with this. And the support that surrounded me within that. So everything that translated on the court was because I knew that I didn't have to worry about anything else, but just educate myself in playing basketball. And so when I got on the court, I was able to just kind of be free and just be myself. I kind of flipped the switch as far as my personality and how I approach basketball. So it doesn't matter if you liked how I played, the intensity that I played with. At the end of the day, it didn't matter because I knew when I walked off of that floor, I was going to have your respect. And at the end of the day, in sports and in that realm, that's all that really matters. I don't have to be likable to you. As long as my teammates know that I have their back and I support them, and we're going to do whatever we can to win games and win a championship, the rest of y'all really don't matter.
That leads me to think about a motto or guiding principles or something that like you take with you no matter where you are in any circumstance. Like, do you have any guiding principles?
Pretty much, it's everything for me is God driven, and I say that a lot. I say it in my work. I say it when I speak to kids. Everything, I'm very spiritually driven. Like, everything is directly related and correlated to God.
Okay.
So when people ask me, well, what's your principles, or why do you do this, or how do you do this, it's a very simple answer for me. Because I surrender. I let myself go into a spiritual place and a spiritual vulnerability, and God either confirms what I'm feeling or he'll pull me into the direction that I'm supposed to go in. So as far as basketball is concerned, from me picking Limestone, that being the school that I knew that I was supposed to be at and I felt that I was supposed to be at, how I deal with my family, it's just everything is connected to him and what's revealed in myself, and then what I learn over time, and what I expect from myself, my friendships, and my relationships and the people around me. So it's just a lot of things that have been revealed through life, going through life, making mistakes, falling down, picking myself up, and all of those different things. So my principle is just, listen to yourself, trust your instincts, and trust God.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into like you and your family dynamic. Okay. So what are some things that, like, have y'all ever argued at a cookout? Have y'all
Absolutely.
argued? Okay,
it's
right.
We black. It's black family. It's gonna
Spades?
happen.
Y'all play spades?
Spades,
Okay.
That's a guaranteed argument.
Okay.
So that's just what it is.
And who is like really the rock and that you feel like in the family that has influenced you?
Well, I would say it's all of them. I grew up in a single parent household. My dad and I are starting to rebuild our relationship now, but for the majority of my life, he was pretty absent. So I grew up in a single parent household, and it was just me, my mom, and my brother. But God blessing me with my family in that village, I got the best of each and every one of them. So I had my uncles to lean on for, support and protection. And then I had, my mother giving me what she could give me, and my grandmother as well. So I was able to develop and lean on all of my family in their own ways. So I have an aunt, her name is Michelle, and I could lean on her for things that I didn't necessarily feel comfortable talking to my mom or my grandma about. Or if there was a situation at school that I didn't want to talk to my mom or somebody about, I could always go to my uncles. So they all played a pivotal role in, giving me the best of what they had to give. And that's why people get who I am today, because I am a direct extension from them.
You definitely speak about that, and I know I want to dive into that a little bit later too, because it's not only in your book Lost in a Game, but also in the play Transition,
Right.
and it shows up constantly every time I have a conversation with you. So I am excited to know, what is like a funny moment that stands out in your mind with your family?
It's so many. Like, it's so many, because I really can't pinpoint one, because when I was coming up we spent so much time together.
Okay.
So whether it was a cookout or Sunday dinners, or them being at my games and we just doing like random things together. My family is, they're very educated, they're very prideful, but they're very funny and loose as well. So yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one moment with them.
I love it. I love it. I definitely know, if it's a cookout, there's always something that's gonna
Oh yeah, you
transpire.
got
The warm weather,
yeah,
just everything around
everything.
it. Well, so when we talk about a tribe and a village and what is happening now just in the world, what are some things that like you wish you saw more of in the community?
Um, I won't necessarily say the community.
Okay.
Because as far as the community is concerned, for me, there's never been a moment that I didn't feel supported, or I didn't feel like I could learn something from Shiloh at large that would help sustain me moving forward. I never felt that way. But as far as, I'll take it back to my family, which I call my tribe. I think being able to just be myself, and being able to kind of just move in life the way that I really wanted to, and being able to know that their expectations for my life may not be what I want at the end of the day, and knowing that they'll be okay with that. And that's been a bit of a journey in recent years. So, but my success in my life and the things that I'm doing may not look like what you wanted or what you envisioned, but that still doesn't take away the fact that I am who I am and what I've become.
So you talk about Shiloh quite a bit. So what is the importance? How, like, give us the background and the importance of Shiloh to you.
I mean, Shiloh for me is generational. The home that my grandmother currently stays in, she's been in for 50 plus years. So it's like, it's that generational bond, that generational empowerment that you have, just knowing that you come from there, and where everybody knows everybody looks out for everybody supports everybody, and we protect and focus on our own. Like, nobody's going to be able to take care of our community better than we can, because we know the significance and the value of it. So to be able to grow up in something like that, there's no way that I would be able to be 30 years old now and not take something from growing up in that area. And so when I do my projects, regardless of where I end up, Shiloh is always going to be mentioned or referenced, or it's going to be based off of my experiences there, because that's, intertwined with my natural being.
So how do we sustain a feeling like that, and not just in the Shiloh community, but all throughout? Communities all across America are being gentrified and changed and switched.
Right.
And how do we sustain that feeling that you just described?
I think everything it really boils down to first, education, and being educated on what's happening and why it's happening and how it's happening. Because sometimes people may approach a situation and they'll see something that they don't like, but they don't necessarily know how to change it, or to take the steps in doing what they need to do to halt whatever is happening. And that's why I take pride in talking to the Shiloh Community Association on numerous occasions because they've literally laid the blueprint in our neighborhood. And not saying that, Shiloh's not being gentrified, but it's not at the rate that we're seeing in other parts of the city. And they have a lot to do with that. They go to the council meetings, they make sure that their voice is heard, and they stick together, against everything. So I just think that the elders have to give us their wisdom, give us the things that they've been doing in the blueprints that they're setting, and then the young people have to be willing to hear them and listen. And then the elders have to also meet the young people where they are, because we're in a different time. So we may not necessarily do things the way that they did them 40 years ago, but we all need each other, because once they transition, we want to be able to sustain our neighborhoods and our communities.
Exactly. For sure. And, whenever I'm thinking of who you are, not just an author, an activist, a friend, a wife, a daughter, a community member, also a director. So you're multifaceted. And when we talk about identity and all of the things that make us who we are, have you ever felt like there's been a time where one part of your identity has been shadowed or had to be diminished?
Yeah, I think the main part of my identity has been hushed for quite some time. It may have been something that people knew and just didn't speak about, or something that people genuinely didn't know. But that's me having a wife. That's part of who I am, and I've only been able to kind of step out into that, and it's probably been the last couple of years. And like I said, when I took that step, it was like, oh, okay, cool. And then there was some issues behind that as well, which I expected. But when it comes, that's somebody that I've always been, but it's been very stifled. It's been very, I know, but I don't want to accept. And so when you kind of grow up in a situation and grow up in an environment like that, you just naturally start to stifle yourself because you don't feel comfortable living in your truth. And, you don't want to disappoint these people. You don't want to disappoint these people who've loved you and supported you for your entire life. And that'll be a sore spot for them. So naturally, you just kind of move through life and just try to act like that part of you doesn't exist, but it's so strong. And so it got to the point where it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. It's just like when I was talking earlier, and I was talking about expectations. That's all well and good, but your expectations is not what I want my life to be.
Living in your truth. That's something that is important and such a journey to get to. So when we talk about, again, identity, family, community, health, where does that, because as a society, we're just now normalizing the conversations of mental health.
Yeah.
But you speak about it quite a bit. What are your thoughts in terms of mental health before we dive into just you personally and the depths of it? So,
it's on par with what you just said. It's only been, recently that we've been even normalized the conversation on mental health, to where there are people that are comfortable, whether they're athletes, celebrities, whomever, comfortable to actually vocalize what it is that they're going through, and then have people who actually listen and empathize. You may not understand it because it's not something that directly affects you, or you're not directly going through it. But the fact that individuals who do suffer from mental health or mental issues can get to the point where they can speak up. However, I have kind of noticed that society is kind of using mental health as a crutch as well, to where if somebody is having behavioral issues or somebody just does something off the wall, it's like, oh, well, they might be going through something mentally. It's like, no, that doesn't necessarily mean that. They could just be a fucked up person or be having a fucked up day that day. But it's like, I don't want it to get to the point where we allow people to water down the conversation when it's individuals who really are suffering from these things, but yet you label somebody who is just having a bad day or sad that day as having depression or anxiety issues.
We could dive in even deeper depending on the demographic, on when and how the words are used. So also talking about mental health in the Black community, that is even more of a stigma. Why do you think that is?
It's something we don't know. It's something we don't understand. It's just, and I don't want to generalize because I know that there's plenty of people in our community who actually know and understand and have done the work to make sure that, we help educate each other. But I think that it's a bit generational as well, because it's a little taboo. It's, sometimes people don't understand how your mind can make you do things or make you feel a certain way. And with certain things, it's not an easy concept to understand. But if you continue to put stigmas on people, it's like, why would they be comfortable speaking up or saying anything to you? And so there's still a lot of individuals who suffer from mental issues that just suffer in silence, or they try to figure out or they have unhealthy coping mechanisms or ways to cope because they don't have somebody that'll just listen, but somebody that they can just sit and talk to.
Yeah, and I think that's such a important part of the puzzle of being able to have those conversations with your friends or your family or someone.
Or, not even always putting the onus on the person who's suffering, but somebody to call and check on them and be like, well, how you doing? How are you feeling today? How's your heart? Different things like that. So it's not always on the person who's suffering to educate you. Just be human.
Right.
If there's somebody in your life that you love and you care about, pick up the phone, ask them how they're doing, shoot them a text, say, hey, can I come and holler at you? And y'all just have a real conversation. And then it gets to the point where it makes it easier for them to feel like they can express themselves or be vulnerable with you simply because you asked them how they were doing.
Right. Yeah, and that goes back onto the notion and the conversation of what you were saying in terms of having your tribe and a village, because it is that collective checking in on each other.
Right.
So going back onto being an athlete, because that was such an integral part of your life for so long.
Right.
So what was that transition from high school to college ball?
Oh, it was a culture shock. It really was. And not just basketball, because it's, everybody, when you get to the college level, everybody is as good as you or better than you. Especially, when you come in as a freshman, you got to find your way. You got to figure out, well, what's my role going to be on this team? If there's a upperclassman that's ahead of you in your position, it's like, well, am I going to come off the bench, or am I going to do the extra work, put the extra work in so I can be considered for a starting spot? And then you take, somebody like me and my tribe who, I have Black Panthers in my family. So you take all of their tutelage, about Black pride, self-respect, all of those things, and then you throw me into PWI, where literally the only other people on campus that look like me work in the cafeteria, or it's the boys basketball team or the track team. So it's like it was a huge kind of culture shock for me. And then just trying to keep up with the the pace of the college basketball game, while making friends and bonding with my teammates and different things like that. And then you go to college, you on your own, so you got to figure out all of those things on your own. You don't really have you don't have your family or your tribe to lean on physically. You can always pick up the phone, but they're not physically there with you. You can't go home to your mom and your grandmother. You can't. It's no Saturdays with your family or Sunday dinners anymore. You gotta figure. You gotta figure life out on your own at 18. And then with college sports in general, everything is that becomes your life. Like it's 24/7, 24/7 nonstop. Even on off days that you might not be in the gym, you still doing something with your team. So you spending more time with these individuals than you spend with your own family. So it was a real culture shock for me at first.
When we talk about the demand of college ball and then how that intertwines with your mental health or how that just health in general, like give us a picture, at least let us know like
it's like
how did that work out?
It's like it's really no self-care days. It's literally you wake up, you got workouts, you got breakfast, you go to class, weightlifting, your skill D routine, skill D workouts, and this is just preseason. Skill D workouts, dinner, study hall. So by the time you are on your own, it's probably 8 o'clock at night. And then you got to wake up and do it all over again the next morning. And then all of that amps up whenever the season actually starts. And you got practice and weights every day. And then you got games 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes you got home games. Sometimes it's an away game. And you're not getting back to campus till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But you're expected to get up and go to class at 7, 8 a.m. the next day. So it's really just a fast pace constantly. So whenever there's something like if your classes aren't going well, or you having some drama with some of your friends, or you having relationship drama, it's like all of those things, and just going through life in general, you're having to deal with all of those things while being like a hamster in a wheel and just continuing to go. So for me, my coping with just life situations became basketball. It's just, all right, well, whatever. And I go to practice, and for those 2 hours, I wouldn't think about it. And then when I walked off the court, I had that same heavy emotional feeling from whatever I was dealing with, but I had something else to think about. I had something else to go to. There was always scheduling routine, so I didn't have to sit with myself. So then when I got to the point that I did, it almost broke me.
Because college athletics and athletics in general have been starting to get more of a light, there's been more stories that have been coming out. And what do you think needs to happen to increase the well-being of an athlete?
I mean, at first, I just feel like the NCAA has to reallocate their resources. I mean, they have a lot of money and power to do a lot of things, but they need to relinquish some of that income to mental health programs specifically for athletes to be able to. So whoever goes to a certain school, they know that they have a counselor there that's actually on staff, so they can help them sort out certain things when you're going through life and then going through the demand of college basketball. So to be able to know that they have somebody on campus or on their staff right there that can help them sort those things out. So I think that's where it starts. They have to reallocate their resources into the health and well-being of their student athletes because they're making millions of dollars off of them.
So when you talk about the vast scope and the multifaceted things that you have done, did you feel pigeonholed in terms of being an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't major in what I really wanted to in college, because there was a concern of, well, how much time are you going to be able to put to that because of the demand of having a history degree. So it's like, well, we have all of these things that we have to do, that you have to do, being a part of the college basketball team. So how much time do you really think that you're going to be able to allocate to the demands of getting that degree? So there was a lot of things I wrote, but I kept it to myself because there was nothing that I really felt like I'd be able to do with it. So it was just school and basketball. That was it.
So you have done a lot since graduating from college and coming back home. Let's talk about being an author. Like, how long did it take you to write a book, Lost in a Game?
It only took me about 3 months to write the entire thing. But it took about 3 years to even get to that place that I felt comfortable even sharing my story. I just felt like, when I got back home, there was a lot of things that I felt like I could give to my community and the kids that were coming up. But I wasn't really too comfortable sharing it. So it took about 3 years to actually get to that place. But once I was there, I just hit the ground running.
So, because you said something earlier on talking about living in your truth and the process to get there and the journey that has gotten you to that space, to living in your truth. What are projects that have really helped you get to that point? And then why is it important for others to tell their story?
So I have my 4 films that's like my foundation. So it's Within Our Gates, from Oscar Micheaux, Fruitville Station, from Ryan Coogler, Middle of Nowhere, Middle of Nowhere from Ava DuVernay, and then Moonlight from Barry Jenkins and Terrell Alvin McCraney. And those are the only 4 films that I've ever really felt seen, and that there were films that I could relate to. And so those were, and it was really Moonlight that gave me that extra push to write my story and give my story to everybody else, because at that point I felt like what I was going through, I know somebody else is experiencing the same thing, and my story is no longer my own. So I need to use myself as a resource to give somebody that one thing that they may need to step out or move forward into living their truth, whatever that looks like, whatever that is for you, to be able to take one thing from my story and adapt it into your day-to-day life, so it inspires you to move forward and just be able to be yourself.
So not only an author, but you're a director, and you created this wonderful screenplay Transition. And you also have a short film that you are working on, and you're continuously creating and showing to the world. When we talk about the feeling, like, give us seeing Transition come to life and seeing Lost in a Game be on paper and be distributed. Like, let's talk about that. What is that feeling that you get?
It's like true purpose. I know that I'm on the path of doing what I'm supposed to do, and it's it's people in this life that just kind of move day to day and don't really know what their purpose is, and it leaves them unfulfilled. So just whenever Lost in the Game came out, it was just confirmation that I was supposed to tell my story. And then with Transition, it's like, this is the realm that I'm supposed to move in next, because this is something that I'm passionate about. So let me take this one part from my life that I was a little vague on, and let me amplify that. And then you'll get something different from Transition than you got from Lost in the Game. And so it was only natural that I would move into putting visuals together, as far as the short film The Power of Our Village that I did for it was simply just for Black History Month, as an ode to where I come from.
When we talk about Black creatives and the importance of putting representation out there, because that's what you were just saying
Yeah.
about those a few films that really captured who you are, or you could see something that represented who you were in those. Now, I mean, why is it important? I mean, I feel like I have an answer, but I don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at it as everything is built by us. You know, the foundation of this country was built by us. But rarely do you see ourselves on screen, or rarely do we see ourselves in the images that we consume. So that's why it's important to share all of our stories, not just the once in a lifetimes through the athletes or celebrities, but through the day to day, the people that you experience every day, the things that you experience in your life, the things that you see your family go through. All of those stories are intertwined with us as a people. So instead of just sitting back and allowing people to control our narrative and control our story, you take that power back by equipping yourself to tell the story that you want to tell, or tell the story that you hope that you want to see, or you wish you had saw as a child or as a teenager, or the stories that you feel like you don't see yourselves. So create that.
Do you think the little 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old Maria would be proud or see themselves within you, what you're creating today?
Yeah, I definitely do. And a lot of what I create comes from that as well. So it's not just my experiences and my family and the things that I've gone through. It's me creating what I wish I would have saw coming up. And you know, of course, you have all of these classic Black films, Black TV shows, all of that. And that's all well and good because it's opened doors for me to be able to do what I'm doing now. But I needed something specific for me. And when you exist in an industry where they might let a couple through the door and everybody else is shut out, you get just one iota of us. But we're so nuanced as a people, you can't just show one image or one thing of us because that's not the totality of who we are.
When we talk about living in a purpose, and also what you're saying is it's much bigger than you, like what your story that you're putting out there. Have you ever been afraid to live into this purpose?
Yeah, I mean, it's always fear that comes with anything that you feel like you want to kind of step out and do. But you learn how to tolerate it. And you also learn that, you know, on the other side of it, that fear is your greatest growth. So you going through that situation, knowing that you're jumping out into it, you're scared, you may not even be fully prepared for it or not feel like you're fully prepared for it. But on the other side, when you produce what it is that you want to do, you've grown so much through it. So you learn just gradually how to tolerate fear because it's always going to be there.
So tell us about the short film and also like what we can expect as you continue to grow, as you continue to move and live in your purpose, because it is a continuous transition. It's a continuous movement.
Right. So with the short film, like I said, it was literally just something that I wanted to do for Black History Month to, you know, pay homage and an ode to Shiloh and where I come from, to be able to say, like, these are the things that were instilled in me as a youth. And regardless of what outside forces try to do, you'll never be able to take the foundation of who we are and what we are away from us. So that was the message that I hope people got from the short film. And then just my natural progression. I'm working on a screenplay right now based on my wife and I's story. I have, you know, other things and other projects in the works with ACT as well. So I'm just going to continue to progress and continue to stay on this path on, you know, where God leads me. regardless of if, wherever these works go, that, once I transition and I'm no longer here, people will still have a piece of me. They'll still have something to be able to reference, to be like, I see myself. Or if I don't see myself, I see my family, or I see my friend, or I see somebody close to me within that story. And that's exactly the path and the road that I'm on right now. Because at the end of the day, like I said, my story is no longer my own. And it's just me using myself as a resource, and also creating things and creating opportunities for other people, for young Black producers and filmmakers and writers and everything. Because a lot of the times when you're coming up, you look, when you get into an industry, you look upward. As far as like who I want to aspire to be or who I want to work with. But all the while you're looking upward instead of looking laterally to see who is within your community that's doing the same thing or trying to be on the same path as you. And I feel like moving laterally to collaborate with certain people in your community who have the same vision and on the same train as you, you get there a lot faster if y'all work together.
That's beautiful. And when we talk about collective community building, when we circle back to what you're talking about and your values and your principles within your village and your faith and your identity and who you are and who you continue to grow to be, I think, people do forget about those who are around them.
Right.
And we have a disconnect. So when we're connecting the dots, like, what are some things that other people need to take into consideration?
Like I said, it just it goes back to you taking a step back and listening and hearing and seeing the individuals in your community. And if y'all are if y'all share the same energy, or if y'all on the same wavelength, because a lot of the times you can learn from that individual as well as they can learn from you. And if you're so busy, being just a singular focus, or I'm going to the top, but there's some mentor or some tutelage that you can get from somebody who's in the same industry or doing the same things, but you just don't link up with them, you may be missing out on your blessing, or you may be missing out on that one thing that can change the course of your work, and vice versa. So it's always, if there's an idea, if there's something that you want to create, cool. Make sure that you equip yourself to be able to do it and not ask for permission. But sometimes you need assistance, or you need a different perspective, or you need a different eye on something. And don't be too prideful and egotistical to the point that you don't reach out or you don't seek people who are doing the same thing, or have done it, or have already done it at a little bit of a higher level. It's like I say, it's just, we got to look out for each other, and we got to reach back and empower each other so we can go to the top and create change and produce these images and continue this, this kind of Black renaissance that we have right now.
So I'm always impressed by sitting down and having conversations with you. One thing is, when we talk to the youth and very maybe limited scope of their identity just based upon or tied or intertwined with one thing. So like basketball or becoming a musician, and forgetting about, like, I really do want to major in history. I do want to be a director. I do want to do all of these different things. What are some words of wisdom that you give to those that are younger who are trying to find exactly what makes them them?
I just, I try to connect with them on a level outside of the thing that they love, or the thing that they identify with the most, whether it's, and most of the time it's sports. So I try to identify with them outside of that. I try to get to know their other interests, and I try to understand them on a different level, because in the long run, that'll be something that they can fall back on. Regardless of what sport they play or whatever they do, it's not going to last forever. but at the end of the day, you're still going to be you.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to take the time to get to know them and ask them things and educate them on things and have them experience things outside of sports or whatever it is that they may be passionate about, that's just equipping them and giving them the tools that once that thing is over with, your life doesn't stop. You already know who you are, so you can figure out the next thing or figure out what's the next thing that you're passionate about.
So I know we've covered a lot of different things. We talked about family. We've talked about you and your identity and community, and also health, mental health, and also what is to come in the midst of still striving for greatness.
Right.
Are you proud? Are you proud of yourself?
Yeah.
When we talk about like, where as a society do we go from here to create a better space for everyone else? What are 3 things that you know is needed in order to progress as a nation? Now I know we were talking about a community, a city, but now like in terms of society.
I just think it really just comes down to getting out of our way. And when I speak from a perspective of a Black perspective, because I can't give you nothing else. It's just allowing our Black men to be them and strive and accomplish the things that they want to do. Getting out of Black women's way, who, you know, we're the foundation and the backbone of everything. So it's like just getting out of our way and allowing us to be us. Also allowing us to have the same equal resources to be able to bring certain businesses to fruition, to where we can create generational wealth. And so we can continue to build and make those things that will set us apart. We don't want to take from you, but we deserve the same opportunities that you had. And for me, that's really what it boils down to.
Well, I deeply appreciate like this conversation, because getting an intimate, uncut, unfiltered conversation about who you are and what you do and where you're going is so important, and you continue to make sure that it is bigger than you.
Yeah.
And your experiences as a child to now. So I mean, man, you are making things happen. And I think that I'm just excited to sit down and have this time to have an unfiltered conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I definitely appreciate it. I can't wait to see what happens next. And I really do, I know that things are going to happen for sure.
I appreciate it.